Good day, everyone. Our group's report is the continuation of the steps of construction methods and operations. I'm Kenneth Di Castro Hinaw and I will be reporting on the installation of utilities. Nung second year tayo, nagkaroon tayo ng subject na engineering utilities and from there, we've known na utilities are services such as water, waste disposal, electricity, gas and communications na dapat meron ng isang construction project upang magampanan nito ang intended purpose nito. For example, isa sa requirements ng isang office building for it to be operational ay electricity. Lalo na't most office works depends on computer and the likes na nangangailangan ng kuryente upang magamit. So it's obvious na utilities are part of almost all construction projects katulad ng tunnels, necessity na may lighting at ventilation upang maiwasan ng road accidents, and unwanted hazards such as suffocation lalo na kung may kahabaan ito. The same goes for highways na nangangailangan ng traffic controls upang maayos na makontrol ang daloy ng mga sasakyan at ng drainage upang hindi magbaha during heavy rains at hindi maantala ang mga motorista. Then for bridges, syempre lighting and controls are a must too. Pero bukod sa mga yan, karamihan sa mga utility works ay konektado sa mga buildings at ang ito ay kinakabit inside and outside the building. For instance, lahat ng electric power equipment na nasa labas ng isang gusali ay considered na outside utility, while yung wiring system within a building ay inside utility. Mapapansin sa pictures na outside utility ang transformers at inside utility ang service panel. When it comes to plumbing systems naman, outside utility yung pipelines and inside utilities naman yung plumbing fixtures. Sa pagdidescribe ng utilities, we can assume an office building provided with the following: water and waste disposal systems, electricity for lighting and air conditioning, gas for heating and telephone service communications. Nowadays, especially on modern buildings, ang pag-install ng utilities including the equipment, supplies, and labor needed is more expensive than the cost of the rest of the structure, na umaabot pa sa halos 2/3 ng kabuuang halaga nito. Kaya we could say na ang paglalagay ng utilities is almost as big as the task ng pagde-design ng isang estruktura. Sa isang typical na building, ang mga pangunahing utilities na kadalasang matatagpuan ay water, sewage, electricity, gas, heating and air conditioning, at communications. Water. Karaniwang kumukuha ng supply ng tubig ang isang lugar sa mga reservoirs tulad ng dam na kung saan ang tubig ay dumadaan sa underground pipelines. Pagkatapos ng mga proseso ng pag-purify upang maging safe for consumption, the water will then be distributed sa pamamagitan ng iba't ibang pipes sa mga kabahayan at establishment sa lugar na yon upang maging available sa mga residente nito. Sewerage. It is a system of pipes na nagdadala ng excess or wastewater. Tinatawag naman na sewer ang isang branch nito na mas kilala natin bilang imburnal. Mayroong dalawang uri nito, ang sanitary at ang storm sewers. Ang sanitary sewers ang nagdadala ng wastewater mula sa mga plumbing fixtures patungo sa mga imburnal na konektado naman sa sewer mains at patungo sa sewage treatment plant kung saan pinupurify ang wastewater upang ma-discharge. Sa kabilang banda, ang storm sewers naman ang nagdadala sa tubig na nanggagaling sa ulan o snow na tumulo mula sa mga gutters ng mga kabahayan at sa mga tubig na nag-a-accumulate sa mga kalye. Base sa picture, nasa kaliwa ang sanitary sewer at nasa kanan naman ang storm sewer. Electricity. As we all know, it is a form of energy involving the movement of electrons flowing through a wire or other conductor. Among the number of ways of generating electricity are through hydroelectric power, atomic fission, at fossil fuels. These fossil fuels include coal, petroleum, and natural gas. In the first figure, we can see na electric current is produced from a power plant. It will be transmitted through wires held high by steel towers hanggang sa makarating ito sa isang city, for example, wherein kailangan muna nitong dumaan sa isang transformer upang babaan ang voltage nito. Madidistribute naman ito sa mga power lines na either nasa poste or nakabaon underground. At bago ito pumasok sa mga residential or commercial buildings, dadaan itong muli sa isang transformer upang gawing 240 volts ang voltage na siyang standard sa mga ganitong pasilidad. Sa second figure, dadaan sa isang metro ang mga wire na siyang susukat sa magiging konsumo sa kuryente sa loob ng specific na time span at didiretso sa isang circuit breaker. Mula dito ay ikakabit na ang mga wire na pagdadaluyan ng kuryente papunta sa mga lighting fixtures, mga appliances at mga outlets. Gas. Some fuel gas are manufactured pero they can be naturally found underground. Sa katunayan, most of the gases consumed sa ngayon ay natural gas which are mined all around the globe. In the figure, gas from wells is forced through large diameter pipes by high-pressure pumps. It will undergo gas treatment and enter several compression stations bago ihatid ng transmission lines papunta sa isang komunidad. Babawasan ang pressure nito bago pumasok sa city gate stations at dadalay naman sa distribution lines underground. Mababawasan muli ang pressure nito bago pumasok sa mga buildings kung saan ito magiging available for the use ng mga gas-burning appliances. Ang utility na ito, however, ay hindi common sa ating bansa and is more likely maobserbahan sa ibang bansa. Heating and air conditioning. Dito naman nakapaloob ang interaction ng furnace at ng air conditioner wherein the burning of gas supplies heat while compressors operated by electricity supply the cooled or chilled air. These two appliances ay pwedeng kontrolin ng tinatawag nating thermostat, isang device na nagre-regulate ng temperature sa isang building. Base sa figure, nagsisirculate daw yung heated or chilled air sa pamamagitan ng sheet metal ducts which are either rectangular or square and nagbabari yung size from 4 inches by 10 inches at least. The air moves around various rooms by entering through a register, which is a grill device and also returns to the furnace or aircon through other registers wherein it is filtered from dirt or dust. Kaya makikita natin na may nakasulat na supply at return indicating the points where air is supplied or returned. Communications. Pagdating naman sa communications, ang naka-highlight dito ay telephone line where wires lead to a central point and enters an equipment cabinet. This cabinet is also where they leave the building bound into a cable which is connected to central telephone offices. The other utilities na pwedeng rin kasama sa isang building are the following. Nabanggit ko previously na malaking parte ng gastos sa isang building ang utilities at ito ay dahil expected sila to operate satisfactorily and syempre with regards to the safety of everyone. They should also not interfere with the functionality of one another. Dapat they operate independently kasi it will be a great inconvenience kung maapektuhan ng isa ang pag-function ng isa pa. And lastly, great efforts are applied just to make sure na they are hidden or blended into floors, ceilings, and walls. Take note that this is not just for aesthetic purposes but also for the welfare of the owners, most likely for the children. Alam naman nating likas na makulit ang mga bata and it would be risky kung basta-basta lang nakalagay sa tabi-tabi ang wires and so on. So let's proceed to the installation of plumbing systems. These systems carry gases on varying pressures, even up to extremely high ones. All these plumbing and piping systems must also be tightened up upang maiwasan ang pagkakaroon ng leakage. Major types of plumbing systems include fresh water, hot water, water for fire protection, gases, sewage, and other fluids. Mayroong 3 criteria sa pagpili ng piping materials na dapat gamitin at ang mga ito ay ang uri ng plumbing system na gagawin, ang designer system, at kung ano ang nakaspecify sa local building codes and standard practices. In our case, we must conform to the National Plumbing Code of the Philippines. But one major question is, who does the plumbing? Who are the professionals na involved sa completion ng plumbing works? It is the architect who determines the number, type, and location of plumbing fixtures, appliances, and equipment. Furthermore, yung kinakailangang piping naman ay design ng engineer na minimake sure na nakaayon sa building code ang execution ng practices. Lastly, it is the duty of a general contractor to subcontract the plumbing proper to a plumbing subcontractor or mechanical subcontractor. The chosen subcontractor should prepare detailed shop drawings and will begin the installation only after the engineer approves the said drawings. One of the major components of a plumbing system is of course its piping. Piping consists of firstly the rigid straight lengths or yung pieces na straight at hindi na isa-subject for bending or whatsoever. Second, there are the curved lengths of flexible tubing. So ito yung mga curve at certain angles na pero at the same time ay flexible pa rin. And lastly, there are what we call the fittings, which consists of couplings, tees, elbows, reducers, and so on. Sila yung mga pieces na ginagamit sa pagdudugtong ng dalawang pipes at certain points within the system. Then yung pipe sizes are specified by a number called the nominal size. Related daw ito sa diameter ng pipe but for certain sizes lang kasi there's a rule behind it. As you can see in the image, for the nominal sizes of pipe ranging from 1/8 inch to 12 inches, it can be observed that the outside diameter is larger than the NPS or nominal pipe size. But for pipe sizes 14 inches and above, the NPS is the same as the outside diameter of the pipe. On the installation of piping, syempre hindi maiiwasan na magputol-putol pa ng pipes since depende sa certain project yung dimensions na needed and cut lengths ng pipe are joined with a fitting. Then the joints are further sealed by a thin film of solder and this is what we call a sweated joint. And yung metal na ginagamit dito ay tinatawag na lead solder although it's technically made of the alloy of lead and tin. Pagdating sa mga fittings, we can observe na ang mga ito ay commercially available as threaded na. So ano ba ang threaded? Ito yung condition kung saan may helical ribs sa dulo ng mga pieces at kung saan parts can be screwed together. And to further secure the joint, may compound called pipe dope ang nilalagay sa threaded part. After some time, this pipe dope will harden, sealing the joint and preventing leaks. In the case of cast iron pipe systems, they are assembled naman through lead joints. Bawat isang cast iron pipe ay may tinatawag na bell end at spigot end which is shown in the image. Yung spigot end daw ay ikinokonekta sa bell end ng kasunod na tubo nito. And sa parting ito, pinapatuluan ng lead para ma-secure yung dugtungan. As for plastic pipes, it has advantages of being flexible and being resistant to corrosive environments katulad ng moist places na kung saan hindi ideal ang metallic pipes. Sa situations naman kung saan a certain structure is to be built on a slab, maglalagay na initially ng mga pipes at tinatawag nating risers, yung parts ng piping na nag-extend above the slab. So, it is really important na maayos at pulido yung dugtungan ng mga tubo at pagkakakabit ng mga fixtures sapagkat kung hindi, it will be hazardous to not only for your properties but also for the lives of people within the vicinity. In the installation of piping systems, there are two types of construction equipment na karaniwang ginagamit sa paghuhukay, the backhoe and the trencher. The backhoe has a long jointed arm with a bucket on the end. Sa paggamit nito, ini-stretch yung arm muna, then binabaon sa lupa yung bucket part at kinokontrol palapit sa mismong makina upang makapaghukay. And I think we're all familiar naman dito. As for the trencher, meron itong malaking gulong na kung saan may maliliit na buckets. Habang umiikot yung gulong, bumabaon at nakakapaghukay naman yung buckets ng lupa. Tuloy-tuloy ito hanggang ma-achieve yung desired depth ng hukay. Sa paglalagay naman mismo ng pipes, ang kadalasang ginagamit ay cranes. Mahalaga na kalkulado at eksakto ang pagkakapwesto ng mga ito, lalong-lalo na para sa sewer lines. Kadalasan na medyo nakahilig ang paglalagay ng mga tubo upang maging mas madali ang pagdaloy ng mga laman nito. So, sino nga ba ang nasa likod ng pagkakabit ng mga pipelines? Una ay ang mga civil engineers who are in charge sa pagdidisenyo ng piping systems. Sila ang nagle-layout ng ruta, nag-i-specify ng sukat ng mga pipes, pumipili ng mga lokasyon ng mga planta, at iba pa. On the other hand, ang mismong nagkakabit ng mga ito ay ang mga mechanical contractors na nag-specialize sa pipeline construction. Sa tulong ng mga craftsmen such as operating engineers, plumbers, pipe fitters, steam fitters, or boiler makers. Pipes. Karaniwan na gumagamit ng cast iron or concrete pipe para sa water systems, although pwede rin naman ang steel, asbestos, cement, copper, at plastic pipes. Hindi man common ang mga manholes dito sa atin, for sure all of us have seen one somewhere such as in movies. These are part ng sewerage which are placed at street corners and intermediate points usually between 200 feet and 300 feet apart. Sa pag-transport ng different kinds of oil and gases, pipelines could be hundreds of miles long which are commonly made of black steel pipes welded together. At every time na magta-transport ng oil for example, the lines are cleaned using a device called Go Devil na shown in the picture para hindi makontaminate yung next na itra-transport. Records. So mostly naman talaga ng pipelines ay installed underground. And that's why accurate records must be kept including every feature usually in the form of drawings. Bukod pa dito, locations can also be monumented, which means mayroon nang nilalagay na permanent marks on the ground itself. Proceeding to the installation of electrical power systems, it is the responsibility of an electrical engineer to design and install electrical works, given na sila yung licensed professionals na qualified by education and by experience sa field na ito. They can also coordinate with mechanical engineers in designing steam generating plants and with nuclear engineers in designing atomic power plants. Sa usapin ng ownership, yung electrical utility company ang nagmamay-ari sa power plant and all the other distribution systems. Samantalang, yung mismong consumer naman ang nagmamay-ari sa buong electrical system within the structure. Sa construction personnel naman, nag-hire ang isang electric utility company ng mga tauhan who they deem fit. And there are two kinds of electrician, the linemen and the wiremen. Linemen are the one who do the outside construction, while wiremen work inside. Just what I have mentioned earlier, electricity generated from power plants usually flow great distances and the cheapest way to send it is at high voltages. Kaya kadalasan may switchyard equipped with transformers sa pag-regulate ng voltages. Then, it will be carried through transmission lines papunta sa mga cities, industrial areas, suburbs, and rural areas. In handling electricity, we must always keep in mind that it is extremely dangerous. Kaya at various points in the transmission system, substations are also installed. Distribution lines are usually located on poles katulad dito sa ating province, pero meron ding places na naka-install ang mga ito underground. Papasok sa bahay, dadaan sa isang metro o kontador ang mga wire na siyang susukat sa magiging konsumo sa kuryente sa loob ng specific na time span, usually per month. Ang parting ito ay tinatawag ding service entrance. Sa residential homes, may dalawang uri ng wiring na kadalasang ina-adapt, ang paggamit ng non-metallic sheeted cable at ang armored cable na kung saan ang armored cable ay may flexible steel na nakabalot dito. Mapapansin din natin na karaniwang naka-enclose sa conduits ang mga electrical wires for the purpose na protektahan ang mga ito sa anumang uri ng pagkasira. The last one is the installation of electrical communication systems. So who installs these systems? These are designed by those who specializes in electronics and communications, or simply by those na tinatawag na ECEs or Electronics and Communication Engineers. In addition, the craftsmen employed include operating engineers, telephone linemen, installers, electricians, and other technicians who build, install, operate, and maintain complicated equipment. Ang mechanisms daw ng ganitong systems ay nasi-shape ng boses ng isang tao ang electric current sa pamamagitan ng transmitter, changing from moment to moment in a way that exactly matches the sounds of speech. Then through the system, the modulated electric currents carry the message even at great distances and despite geographical constraints. Pagdating sa other end, inaando naman ng receiver yung ginawa ng transmitter by changing the modulated current back into sound waves para maintindihan ng nasa kabilang linya. For situations na mag-a-avail ka ng telephone service, magkakabit yung installer ng wire called drop wire from the telephone pole to the building. The wire is firmly attached sa solid part ng building kung saan ilalagay yung service entrance. And from there, papasok na yung wire sa connector boxes of jacks para sa bawat telepono. Pero paano nga ba nagiging posible ang real-time communication with people even miles away? May mga radio broadcasting and receiving equipment na ini-install sa iba't ibang regions para maging konektado yung central offices. Kino-convert yung modulated current muna into radio waves of very short wavelength na mas kilala as microwaves. Tapos merong microwave towers na nakatayo na 30 to 50 miles ang pagitan at pinapasa-pasa yung radio signal hanggang makarating sa intended destination. Installing radio and television systems. On instances naman na may scheduled na malaking event at outdoor yung venue or sa labas ng studios, gumagamit ng mobile units o trucks na may communications equipment. Nagsaset up sila ng temporary lines, cameras, and microphones days before such event. At sa mismong araw, different radio or television station may pick up the program carried by the network. Installing navigational systems. There are two types ng constructed communication systems para sa aircraft and ships, kaya nakakapag-navigate sila na ligtas in almost all kinds of weather. Una ay yung nagpapadala ng radio signal from a land-based station to instruments na nagdidikta sa mga piloto ng kanyang eksaktong lokasyon. Yung pangalawa naman ay radar system which sends an electronic signal naman from a transmitter sa isang TV picture tube-like scope na nagsasabi rin ng eksaktong lokasyon. Lastly, private communication systems. These systems naman ay ginagamit sa pagmamonitor ng daloy ng mga tauhan at materyales. Ginagamit din sila for interaction purposes with other people or groups. And its installation follows the same pattern as for other communication systems. And that concludes my report. Thank you for listening.
Enclosing frame superstructure. Some kinds of structures are usually left uncovered, katulad ng bridges, roads, dams, and mga tore. Most buildings and some towers are wholly or partly enclosed. This reading concerns only enclosed structures. It refers chiefly to buildings which have a frame or skeleton type of superstructure. However, many of the practices described here will apply also to superstructures of the load-bearing type. Why the framework is enclosed? Our starting point in a building framework is a wood, steel, or concrete. A concrete itself is very little value. Bakit kailangan nating i-enclose with an exterior skin? Para daw ma-keep out sa sun, sa rain, sa snow, wind, heat, cold, and air pollutants katulad ng dust and smoke. Another need is for one or more floors for the use of people, equipment, and materials. The features which enclose the inside of the building are doors, ceilings, partitions, and the inside of exterior walls. These features permit the control of the temperature, humidity, light, and the noise inside the building. They also improve the appearance by hiding the utility lines and by providing attractive textures, colors, and decorative details. Sino ba yung nag-enclose ng framework? Sabi, architect. Architect also usually select the methods and the materials for enclosing the framework of the building. Make selections based upon appearance, economy, and the purposes which the room will be used, and upon the recommendation of the superstructural engineer who may design and frame in the large building. Architect daw and superstructural engineer yung nag-enclose ng mga framework katulad ng mga large building. General contractor is responsible for enclosing the building, although he may subcontract parts of the jobs such as roofing, tile work, and the painting usually subcontractor. Craftsman is responsible for enclosing the building, although he may subcontract parts of the job such as roofing, tile work, and painting to specialty subcontractor. Roofing. A roof is a watertight skin which covers the top of the building. The roof is usually put on before exterior walls are started and before floors are laid. The purpose of the roof is to protect interior of a building from the weather. The roof also can be a major factor in the appearance of a building. Sa example ng craftsman, yung craftsman na nasabi natin is yung mga pwede ring laborer or yung mga carpenter. Siyempre, yung general contractor ay yung siyempre yung may-ari ng project. An engineer or an architect. At types of roofs. A flat roof is a seldom really level. Usually, it has a very slight slope or slant. It is used mostly commercial or industrial construction. Nakikita naman natin yan. Bihira lang nga ginagamit. A pitch roof has a much greater slant or slope than a flat roof. It most often used for houses, but it may be applied to other structures to achieve pleasing structural effect. Yan, mostly nagamit. Yan yung nakikita natin yung pitch roof. Advantage of flat roofs. The biggest advantage of a flat roof is that the space directly underneath is completely stable. The slated ceiling of an attic under a pitch roof can be used only in limited ways. A room with a slant ceiling is also difficult to heat and air condition. Getting the most space for the least money is important in the most industrial and commercial structures. In terms of cost advantages naman, it has less area of roofing for the amount of floor space covered dahil flat roof nga siya. Uses the cheapest materials. Hindi naman katulad siya ng pitch roof kasi siya ay magastos. The roofing operation can be done with the most modern mechanized equipment, yung mga modern strategies or modern equipment yung nakagamit. Sometimes a flat roof requires a heavier framework than does a pitch roof. However, the cost advantage of flat roof nearly always outweighs this advantage. Super framework. A roof is supported by a framework of the building. The part of the framework that lies directly under the roof is a system of concrete, steel, or wooden rafters, beam, trusses, or reinforced concrete slab. Yun din yung mga framework na nasabi natin. Deck. On the top of the supporting framework, the roof deck is laid. The deck supports many things: weight of the roof, the snow or rain, rooftop equipment such as air conditioning units, equipment used by the roofer. Dito sa deck, nasabi lang dito na siya yung mismong nag-resist ng load katulad nung dito rin nalagay yung mga aircon, mga conditioning units nga ni yung mga equipment na nagamit sa pagbubong. Yung isa pa yung snow or yung ulan. The deck may be made of steel, pre-stressed concrete slab, ordinary reinforced concrete, plywood, gypsum, vermiculite, feather, wood fibers, or fiberboard. Roofs usually cover large areas that are subject to wide vibrations in temperature from below 0 to above 150 degrees. Therefore, roof decks are constructed with expansion joints. The decking is laid by the roof deck contractor or by a general contractor. Kadalasan, nakikita natin sa mga deck is yung pre-stressed concrete slabs or ordinary reinforced concrete sa mga commercial or industrial building. Insulation. Insulation consists of sheets of wood or plant fiber, fiberglass, cork, or foam plastics. All of these are excellent insulators when dry but not when wet. If the building will have a high humidity, a vapor barrier is placed on top of the building. Sa mga insulation is kadalasan ito yung mga nagamit natin sa pambubong. Dahil yung insulation na yan yung nagpapabawas ng init ng araw para doon sa loob ng ating room is malamig. Built-up roofing materials. Although another materials such as metal and plastics are used, over 90% of the flat roofs are the built-up type. Three kinds of material are combined in a build-up roof: roofing felt, bitumen, or asphalt or tar, and a gravel or slag. Yung roofing felt is a mat or fiber which has been soaked at the factory in a bitumen. It comes and rolls 36 wide and number of grades. Yung bitumen or asphalt is a thin liquid with heated and easy to apply. However, it cools, it becomes a soft and flexible solid. It seals against the passage of water. Grabber or slag consists of pieces about the size of a pea. It has many uses: to protect the roof against foot traffic, to help the roof resist uplift or blowing of the wind, to protect the bitumen from the direct rays of the sun, to reflect and absorb the heat of the sun, thus keeping the roof cooler. Yan nga yung tatlo na ito yung nag-consist ng built-up materials o built-up roof for commercially and economically. All these roofing materials are relatively low in cost. Nababa yung cost. The fibers are the products of the food industry. The bitumen is a product by producing gasoline. Slag is a product of steel making. Gravel is produced by crushing natural rock. So, dun ang gagaling yung mga built-up roofing materials natin sa using gasoline, sa steel making, at sa natural rock. So, laying a built-up roof, dito sinasaad kung paano i-build yung build-up roof. Yung consist nga ng tatlong materials kanina. Sa flashings, Flashings are strips of material which shield the joint between roofing and anything else that projects or rises above it. Flashings are needed at the edge of the built-up roofing around pipe, bends, and chimneys and expansion joints. Flashing can be formed from sheet metal, copper, galvanized steel, aluminum, stainless steel, or lead. Also, asphalt, felt, rubber, and plastic are used. Yung flashing natin nasabi, siya yung nakadikit sa roof or a wall. Kung nakikita natin sa mga commercial building, mga ganyan. Kahit sa ating mga bahay, meron tayo yung flashing na yan. Roofing bands. Yung roofing bands, nasad lang dito yung kung saan may dito na nakahiwalay yung nagamit ng roofing materials sa paghati ng dalawang bubong. Halimbawa, iba yung bubong mo dito sa one side, iba dito ang bubong mo sa second side. May pagitan sila dun sa gitna. Siya yung nasabing roofing bands. Enclosing exterior walls. Sa enclosing exterior walls, meron daw tayong two types. Load bearing and non-load bearing. Ito sa load bearing, siya yung load bearing na nasabi dito is yung ating main na haligi ng bahay or a building. Siya yung nag-resist ng load. Siya yung nag-resist nga ng load. Sa non-load bearing naman, siya yung parang pangalawang haligi or nasa wag nating siya naman yung hindi nag-resist ng load. Dito sa load bearing ay siya yung main column natin or main wall nasabi. Who installs interior walls? Sino na nag-install exterior walls? Architect chooses the materials and the type of exterior walls for planned building. Architect yung nag-choose ng materials and type ng exterior walls. If the structure will be large, he consults first with a structural civil engineer. The architect must give many kinds of important information. For example, in case of the brick wall, plans and specification must show. First, where the wall is to be placed, saan alagay yung wall, yung thickness or kapal, the location and the size of the window and door opening, saan nakalagay yung pati sizes noong bintana at mga pintuan natin. Yung pattern of laying bricks, yung band, nasabi. The type of joints, kung ano gamitin. The kind of mortar and brick. How the wall is be tied into frame, kung paano daw ita-tie yung wall to the frame. Usually, the interior walls are enclosed by a general contractor by his own employees. Sometimes, however, this task is constructed to a specialty subcontractor. For example, one who does only masonry works. Mga masonry works natin, subcontractor katulad ng former o mga craftsman. A great many different craftsmen work on installing curtain walls. This include carpenters, bricklayers, stonemason, sheet metal workers, welders, glassers, or install ni mga install na mga mabasagin o glass and iron workers. Sila yung mga tao na bumubuo sa pag-install ng exterior walls. Materials for enclosing exterior walls. Exterior walls may be covered with many different types of material, tulad ng masonry, wood sliding, panels of wood, plastic, glass, aluminum, enameled steel or concrete, or other materials such as poured in place, reinforced concrete or stucco, door and window frames, natawag din siyang box, are generally of steel, aluminum, or wood. Above each is lintel or a beam which supports the external wall above the opening. Below each frame is threshold or steel to support the frame. Yan naman yung materials na binubuo ng sa pag-enclose ng exterior walls. Masonry. The masonry materials has been used for external walls for 1,000 of years na round. The material will not burn, di nasusunog, is attractive, and found nearly anywhere. Nakikita kung saan. Materials are used in masonry walls are brick, concrete block, clay tile, stone, granite, limestone, marble, and stone, and glass block. A mortar naman is a mixture of sand, water and mortar cement. It's placed between the masonry unit to hold them securely in place. Alam namin sa masonry, binubuo siya ng proportion ng every class, katulad ng class A, class B, class C, o class AA, class triple A, mga proportions kung saan nakikita natin yung result kung paano natin gamitin yung sa pagkuha ng 40 bag of cement, ilang sand or ilang gravel yung gagamitin. How masonry is laid? Paano daw siya nilaid? Mortar is a prepared mortar mixer, which like a small concrete mixer. Mason tenders or helpers operate the mixer and keep the mason applied with the mortar and pieces masonry. Dito naman ay sa pagbuhos, hindi pa pagbuhos pala. Dito kung paano nagkakaroon ng proportions ng cement, sand and gravel sa mga equipment materials, katulad nga ng mga concrete mixer. Panels. Exterior walls may be built up panels which are larger than individual pieces, masonry or sliding. Panels will be made of glass, plastic, aluminum, nail steel, stainless steel, galvanized steel, and reinforced concrete or marble. Stucco. Stucco, which is somewhat similar to concrete, applied on the south of the building. It is made from masonry, cement, sand, and water. It is hard, strong, and fire resistant. Stucco resists rot and fungus and keep its color. Stucco can be finished in many textures, patterns, and colors. Insulating. Sa insulating, may mga reasons tayo. Insulation is used in a building for many reasons. First, to restrict or cut down the flow of heat either into or out of a building. Nag-a-adds din sila ng comfort of the people inside the dwellers, heating and cooling cost. 2. Retard or slow down the spread of fire. Some insulation not burn in any conditions while other burn slowly dim when exposed to intense heat. Third, and to absorb noise. Siya din nag-absorb ng mga ingay sa isang room or a building. To serve as a vapor barrier by preventing the passage of humid air, reducing the condensation of water which might discolor wall surfaces or cause structural damage. Who installs insulation? The architect decides upon the type of insulation to be used. Insulating characteristic of most materials are well known to him. Alam din niya yung mga characteristic ng materials. On major structures, or where new materials or techniques are used, the architect may use the services of a mechanical engineer. Siya naman yung alam ng architect yung new materials at techniques, pero mas kailangan niya yung services ng mechanical engineer. Insulation is most often installed by the general contractor with his own employees. Laging general contractor at mga kanyang tauhan. But sometimes, yung subcontracted contractors to roofers, masonry subcontractors, or even subcontractor who specialize in insulation. Sila daw yung iba pang nag-install ng mga insulation. Craftsmen who install insulation may be carpenters, mga karpentero natin, mga insulator, or mga roofers, taga-bubong, painters, mga nagapinta, mga pinta ng bahay, or often ductling work the steel joints. Sila yung mga tao na nakikita natin sa pag-install ng mga insulations. Insulating materials. Insulating materials are grouped into. May tatlo tayong groups. Una, yung mineral product. Yung mineral product made from sand, glass, mica, asbestos, and certain plastic. It may be in form of loose fill consisting of small particles. Vegetable products. Second, includes materials such as cork, wood, and plant stocks. Metallic products. Third, such as aluminum, is made to reflect heat by use of bright, shiny surface and applied between the building members or a kind of application referred to a fallback drywall. Thank you sa pakikinig.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Adeline Lourdes M. Harabe, and I will be discussing to all of you about the finishing the project. So when the finished work is done. The order in which the finished work is done depends upon, first, the type of building. Nakadepende ito sa laki or sa liit ng isang building o isang proyekto. Mas malaki yung building or mas malaki yung proyekto, mas matagal yung trabaho bago matapos. Next is the finishes chosen, the availability of subcontractors and craftsmen at a particular time. Maaring ang halimbawa nito ay kung yung schedule ng paggawa ay hindi tugma sa schedule ng mga manggagawa. And lastly is how the general contractor wishes to schedule his work. Next is who does the finished work. The architect indicates on the plans and specifications and the type of finished work desired. He may be helped by an interior designer. Sa pagpili naman ng color at saka ng patterns na agamitin sa project or doon sa building ay owner yung madalas na ina-consult ng mga architect. Tapos, while the contractor may do the finished work himself, nearly all of it except the cleanup is usually subcontracted. Various tradesmen do the finished work. Some of them, like painters, may be coming for the first time. Others, such as carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and sheet metal workers, may be returning to the site to do the finished work several days or weeks after roughing it. Other craftsmen who may be involved are iron workers, welders, paper hangers, and plasterers. Finished work requires a high degree of care and skill. The craftsmanship of the finisher is what is seen most in the structure. Finishing the project can be divided into 4 parts. It is the trimming, painting and decorating, installing accessories, and cleaning up. First is the trimming. It is finished carpentry done to enclose window and door frames, cover joints between walls and floors or ceilings, and build stairs and install cabinet work such as built-in shelves, cabinets, and counters. Inside door frame. So this is the parts of a door. First is the top rail, first mullion, panels, lock style, lock set, bottom rail, second mullion, lock rail, truss hold or saddle, jump, stop, staking, hinge style, casing and frame, and hinge. While the parts of windows includes head, rail, sash, grills, stool, apron, frame, glass panes, sash lock, casing, lift, and seal. Next is the joints between ceiling and walls. It may be covered by some kind of molding. If both the wall and ceiling are plasterboard, the joint is merely filled, taped, and sanded. To prevent scuff marks around the bottom of interior walls, most room has a baseboard and quarter round. So this is a picture of a baseboard and a quarter round. Next is stair treads. It is supported by cutout support or stringer. Often stairs are prefabricated. So yung stair treads ay yung inaapakan natin sa hagdan. So there are various cuts used to fit an adjoining surface. These are half-blind dovetail joint, sliding dovetail, mortise and tenon joint, biscuit joint, pocket joint, dado, rabbet, true dovetail joint, box joint, basic butt joint, mitered butt joint, half lap joint, and lastly, tongue and groove joint. Cabinets may be prefabricated or built on the job. Wall cabinets are hung by fastening the cabinets to the studs. Cabinet doors are then carefully fitted. Sa counters ng kitchens at saka ng CR ay madalas na inagamit or ang inagamit talaga ay waterproof at saka stain-resistant materials tulad ng tiles, ng ceramic tile or a hard plastic like formica. The purposes of painting is to protect part of structure, to make part of structure easy to clean and maintain, to present a pleasing appearance, and to provide safety or informational markings. Parehas ng exterior at saka yung interior ng isang structure ay maaaring pinturahan. Yung exterior painting ay maaaring simulan kung yung isang structure o ang isang proyekto is completely enclosed. Samantalang yung interior painting ay maaari lamang simulan kung yung walls at saka yung pag-trim ay tapos na. Floor finishing is generally one of the very last operations. The architect or engineer designing the structure decides on the type of paint and decoration. Madalas ay katulong niya ang interior designer ay isang representative ng paint manufacturer. The owners or yung may-ari yung madalas na ina-consult pagdating sa kulay at saka sa patterns. Sa pagpili ng pintura, may mga bagay na kailangang i-consider. Ang una dito ay durability or how long will the paint will last. Cost of application or yung magagastos sa pag-apply ng pintura. Yung decorative effect nito o kung yung pleasing ba siya sa mata at nakakadagdag ng ganda sa proyekto. Yung resistance to abrasion, kung hindi ba siya madaling may scratch or masira or magasgas. Fire resistance to air pollutants, extent of prior preparation of surface, and waterproofing characteristics. General contractors may do painting and decorating work with their own employees or they may subcontract the work to specialists. Craftsmen include painters, paper hangers, cement finishers, floor finishers, waterproofing specialists, laborers, and sometimes artists. Pagpili ko alin yung tamang pintura isang napaka-importanting bagay. Maaring malaman kung alin ba yung nararapat na gamiting pintura sa pamamagitan ng pagtanong sa mga experienced painter or sa mga nagabenta ng mga pintura. Paints are often classified by the type of vehicle. First is the oil-based paints. Ito yung madalas na ginagamit sa mga molding, cabinets at saka sa furnitures. Next is the water-based paints. Madalas itong inagamit naman sa pader at sa kisame. It is less toxic and easier to clean up than oil-based paints. Water-based paints comes in a variety of shades including matte, eggshell, or high gloss. Malalaman mo kung oil-based ba or water-based ang isang pintura sa pamamagitan ng paggamit or pagpahid ng isang puting tela na basa ng alcohol sa isang spot nito. Kung ang pintura ay dumikit sa tela, ito ay yung water-based, samantalang kung walang nangyari or walang dumikit na kahit na ano dun sa basang tela ng alcohol, ay oil-based ito. Next is the polyvinyl acetates. Serve as the film-forming ingredient, water-based paints. It is also used in adhesives. Next is the alkyd. It is more commonly used on metal at saka sa mga kahoy. It is tougher than oil-based paint, which is great for surface that needs something more durable. Yung last ay yung asphaltic-based paints. Siya naman yung ideal na gamitin sa mga warehouses, plant rooms, tennis courts, playground, and etc. Paints can be made mildew resistant. They can also be made to chalk. Some enamel paints have a high gloss. Flat paints are just opposite. Their surface is dull or non-reflective. Some paints are more or less all-purpose and can be applied over wood, metal, plasterboard, or masonry. There are special kinds of paints for floors, for masonry, for exposure to saltwater spray, and for metals. Some paints, like those with an asphaltic base, are good for waterproofing. Some paints are made especially for surfaces which have never been painted. Others are for areas that have already been painted. Some paint must be thinned to make it easy to apply and to make it dry quickly. Thinners include turpentine, mineral spirits, and water, depending on the vehicle of the paint. There are special thinners for some paints. Some thinners cause the paint to stick to a surface better than the paint alone would adhere. Besides, thinners may and other substances may be added to paint to give it certain characteristics. Some of this will make the paint penetrate the surface much deeper or provide a better seal over the area. Other things, like fine sand, will give the paint a rougher or textured surface. Other coatings includes a varnish, stains, and putty. First is a varnish. It is a solution of linseed oil and resins. It provides a hard, clear surface or quite resistance to water. Spar varnish provides a waterproof surface. Shellac is a clear, quick drying mixture with alcohol as a vehicle and resin as a pigment. Yung varnish yung madalas na inagamit sa mga sa mga cabinet or sa mga bangko or sa mga lamesa na gawa sa sa kawayan. Next is stains. It is a oil-based or water-based liquid which give a slightly tinted or colored appearance to wood without hiding the grain. Lastly is putty. Putty. It is a mixture of chalk and linseed oil. It has the consistency of toffee or caramel and hardens when exposed to air. Today, traditional putty is often replaced by plastic material. Both can be used to fill holes or cracks. Caulking, formerly done with putty, is now done with a plastic caulking compound. A caulking gun, which is very similar to grease gun, dispenses the compound. The next topic that I will discuss is applying the paint. Paint can be applied by brush, roller, or spray. Spray may seem a faster way of getting the job done, but it requires experience to get an even and unblemished surface and is best left to professional applicators. Spraying also requires care with masking and protecting nearby surfaces. There are some general rules in applying a paint. Una ay huwag magpintura kapag may temperature na mas mababa sa 10 degrees Celsius or mas mataas sa 25 degrees Celsius. Bawal sa mas mababa sa 10 degrees Celsius kasi mas matagal daw na matuyo yung pintura. Samantalang kapag naman mas mataas sa 25 degrees Celsius ay mas mabilis daw matutuyo yung pintura. Next is, wag magpintura sa pag yung sobrang init. Especially sa mga bubong daw. Next is, wag magpintura kung kung may rain forecast sa araw na yun kasi syempre sayang lang yung pagpintura mo kung masisira din naman ang ulan. Wag din daw magpintura ng oil-based paint kapag kapag patanghalin or tanghali na kasi daw ay hindi daw matutuyo yung pintura hanggang gabi. Tapos magkakaroon ng moist, nagkakaroon ng hamog, ay di lalong magkaiba yung pintura. Pintura daw naman sa mga windows at saka sa mga doors gamit yung oil-based paints. Kung maaari daw ay magpintura or magsimulang magpintura ng mas maaga para daw mas mahaba yung time na matuyo yung pintura bago isarado ng gabi. Yung kasunod naman ay wag daw masyadong kapalan yung pintura kung hindi daw naman naka-specify or naka-label dun sa pintura na kailangan makapal yung dapat na pintura mo, yung pag-apply mo. Pag-apply naman ng next coat, dapat before mo i-apply yun, tuyo na muna yung una mong in-apply. Kapag tuyo na yung pintura, maaaring gumamit ng very lightly sandpaper para matanggal yung mga uneven undercoat applications or yung mga dust particles. With exterior painting, kailangan daw i-ensure na yung primer ay na-overcoated na sa loob ng 4 na buwan bago mag-apply ng pintura. Tapos lastly ay sa pagpintura ng walls, kailangan unahin yung taas and baba. Tapos sa outside ay yung paint soffits first, tapos sa inside ay yung ceilings daw muna. Applying a paint using a roller. Sa mga tools na pwedeng gamitin sa pagpintura, yung rollers daw yung pinaka best na na pwedeng gamitin sa pag-apply ng paint kung mabilisan yung pagpintura at saka kung ang yung pinturahan ay mga large areas or yung mga large surfaces kagaya ng walls at saka ng ceilings. Tapos yung short pile rollers ay nag-hold lang siya ng counting maliit na amount ng paint kaya nagabigay siya ng mas smooth na finish kaysa dun sa sa long pile rollers. Yung short pile rollers daw ay best na pwedeng gamitin kapag yung pinturahan daw ay smooth surfaces. Samantalang yung medium and long pile rollers naman ay siya ay suited for yung medyo rough yung yung dingding. Tapos, the longer the pile, the more noticeable will be the stippling or orange peel effect in the finish. This can mask small defects in the surface. Yung foam plastic rollers naman ay suitable lang siya sa mga oil-based paints para sa mga smooth surfaces. Para maging para daw maging successful yung pag-apply ng paint gamit yung roller ay kailangan daw i-consider yung mga yung mga bagay na ito. Una ay yung kapag daw yung alam mong hindi man maaabot ng roller ay unahan mo na daw na pinturahan siya ng gamit yung brush. Tapos overlap na lang or patungan na lang siya ng pintura ulit gamit yung roller. Pero habang basa pa yung edges noon. Tapos load the roller by immersing it in paint. Then run it backwards and forwards across the corrugated area of the tray to evenly wet it. Next is to roll the paint onto the wall so the roller is almost dry as it bridges the gap to the wet edge of the section previously painted. Always work in the same direction. Palagi naman itong napalala kahit sa pagbunot ng sahig or sa pagkulay ng mga drawing, kailangan ay isa lang yung direction para maging mas maganda yung kalabasan nung nagawa mo. Tapos roll over the area painted with a near dry roller to lay off the surface to give an even finish. Next is to do not force the roller onto the surface being painted or overroll the surface dahil pwede siyang mag-cause ng patchiness. Maintain a wet edge of paint to roll into whenever possible. Although when painting large area, it may not always be possible to maintain one. Kasi pagkatas mong ipinturahan yung malaking area kasi syempre malaki yung pininturahan mo. Pwedeng yung side na, yung unang-una mong napinturahan is patuyo na or medyo tuyo na ganun. Next is, before mo daw gamitin yung roller, dapat ay nalinisan mo ito't natanggal yung mga dust or ibang mga particles na pwedeng maka-apekto dun sa sa finish product or sa finish na pag-paint. Tapos, when a roller is being used on consecutive days, it can be covered tightly in cling film and stored in a cool place overnight. Next is, after finishing painting, run the roller over sheets of newspaper to remove excess paint. Next is, clean it with an appropriate solvent and wash it in warm soapy water and rinse thoroughly in clean water. Hang rollers to dry in a way that the pile is not flattened. Applying a paint using a brush. The correct way to brush on paint is to use a brush na suitable daw sa klase ng pintura na gamitin or sa material or sa surface na pinturahan. Kapag daw pinturahan mo a large area, syempre kailangan mong gumamit ng mas malaking brush na na kaya mong i-handle. Tapos for the intricate areas daw ay such as fretwork on an all villa veranda, use a brush is small enough to get into the crevices. Tapos kapag daw sa pag-load ng paint dun sa brush, ay remove mo daw yung mga excess paint na pwedeng magtulo-tulo dun sa brush sa pamamagitan ng pagpahid sa sa may bungangan ng container para mabawasan daw yung risk na pwedeng magtulo-tulungan yung pintura dun sa brush. Next is yung gumamit daw ng tamang force or pressure sa pagpintura para daw magpinturahan ng maayos yung surface. Tas next ay brush the paint in two directions. In general, in the direction the light is shining. Next is always brush towards the wet edge. A better finish will be achieved, especially with acrylic paints, when the paint is brushed into an edge that is still wet. When finishing to a corner, brush out from it to meet the new paint. Ensure the paint is evenly applied. Lay off the wetted area or laying off is applying the finish strokes with light brush strokes in the direction of the grain for timber and towards the main source of light for flat surfaces. Cutting in refers to applying a paint edge or line where two colors or finishes are joined, generally without using a masking tape. This may be in a corner or change of direction of a surface, such as a ceiling or wall intersection, or a wall or architrave intersection, and when painting adjacent to the glass of timber frame windows. A cutting in brush where the bristles are tapered facilitates cutting in. In order to cut in, use a small brush, typically no more than 50 to 60 millimeters wide. Dab the brush into the paint and drag it dry against the edge of the paint container. Do not overload the brush. Using the sharp edge of the bristle wedge, drag the brush in a steady line along the required paint edge. Continue until most of the paint has been left on the surface. And lastly is to repeat the procedure until the edge painting is complete. How to take care of brushes. First is to clean and look after brushes for a better painting result. If painting in hot weather, clean the brush during the day to prevent it becoming clogged with dried paint. When a brush is being used on consecutive days, it can be covered tightly in cling film and stored in a cool place overnight. After the painting job is finished, clean the brush thoroughly with the right solvent. Wash in warm soapy water and rinse thoroughly in clean water. Keep brushes in dry storage and hang by the handle or resting flat. Never store brushes for more than just a day by standing on their bristles in a container of water or solvent. Decorating. The most common form of decorating is with strip or sheet materials. Wallpaper is widely used. Some wallpaper consists of printed paper sheets, which come in rolls. Others are rolls of fabric with a paper or plastic surface. Originally, wallpaper was applied to the wall with a flour and water paste. Today, better adhesives are used. Some adhesives are even placed on the wallpaper at the factory. On the job, the sheets only need to be moistened. Some buildings contain expensive and ornate decoratings prepared by the artists, such as the murals or large pictures painted directly on a wall or ceiling with oil-based paint, and the frescoes, which is a painting created on a wet plaster wall with watercolor paint. Finishing masonry and concrete. Masonry such as stone, unglazed clay tile, concrete block, or brick is usually cleaned with a mixture of water and muriatic acid. Also, any excess mortar is removed. Concrete walls are patched with grout whenever there are holes remaining from formed ties or where there is any honeycomb or the minor exposure of aggregate. Any excess concrete which has oozed out of a joint in the form is stripped off. Other treatment given concrete may consist of rubbing the surface with a stone, applying muriatic acid, and applying a very thin layer of grout to hide holes or to give a smooth appearance. Installing accessories. It includes plumbing and piping fixtures such as wash basins and grills over street drains, electrical fixtures such as lights and signs, heating, cooling, and ventilating fixtures such as furnaces and air conditioning, communications fixtures such as telephones, ironwork such as handrails and ladders, and lastly is hardware such as mailbox. When accessories are installed, madalas daw ay yung mga accessories is ina-install sa isang structure or sa isang project kapag yung structure ay pwede na siyang saraduhan or pwede na siyang or may nagabantay na dito kasi daw pwede daw manakaw or magkaroon ng vandalism doon. Kaya dapat ay naka-lock na ito or may nagabantay doon sa sa structure. Installing most fixtures consists two operations. attaching them to the structure or setting them in their own bases and hooking them up to utility lines. Who installs accessories? Yung madalas na nag-install or yung mga nag-install ng accessories ay yung carpenters, plumbers, steam fitters, electricians, sheet metal workers, iron workers, welders, and painters. In light construction, plumbing accessories either are hung on some part of the structural framework or are set on the floor, on counters, or on foundations of their own. Plumbers and electricians make most of the connections. Many gas companies, however, require that gas connections be made by their own employees, and all gas companies inspect gas connection within a structure. Each accessory is tried and tested for proper operation and the absence of leaks. Sa highway at saka sa heavy construction, may mga inatake din daw ng mga accessories ang plumbers at saka pipe fitters. This may include grates and cover plates over drains on bridges and highways, accesses to pipeline valves and controls, and similar accessories which are added after the main structural work is completed. Yung sa heating at saka sa air conditioning unit ay ang nagagawa ay mga sheet metal workers. Tapos sa electrical cable ay syempre yung electricians at saka sa mga water and drain pipes ay syempre yung plumbers. Registers are connected to the ducts in the wall, floor, or ceiling through roughly finished holes. The metal facing of the register overlaps the wall surface so that the rough edges at the hole cannot be seen. Registers are attached by screws and may be removed easily. Vents are provided beneath the gables in attics, under soffits, in crawl spaces under buildings, and in partitions. Filters are put in the duct system to remove dust from the air. After the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system is completed, it is completely adjusted and checked. The dampers and thermostats are set. Sometimes this cannot be done until a change of season. Halimbawa daw ay yung heating system daw ay hindi siya pwedeng i-test tuwing summer. Kasi syempre, alangan namang mag-open ka ng heater na mainit naman yung panahon. Tapos, exhaust fans are connected to vent pipes through walls to draw out or exhaust steam, smoke, and odors. Ito yung madalas na inalagay sa malapit sa kitchen para yung yung usok galing doon sa pagluto ay hindi man magstay doon sa loob ng bahay. Meron din ito sa sa CR. Installing electrical accessories. Lighting fixtures often are installed over outlet boxes which were put in place during the roughing in of the electrical lines. Outdoor lighting often involves heavy fixtures which need a crane for handling. Installing these accessories may mean earth moving, concrete work, and iron work as well as electrical work. Outdoor accessories and their controls and connections also need to be weatherproof. Other electrical accessories which are installed include built-in appliances, heating elements, and electrical machinery. Some buildings, such as hospitals, even require the installation of extra electrical power plants which can operate in case the regular electric power system fails. Installing communications accessories. Although complete communication systems can be installed after structure is completed, it is far better to have the lines and equipment designed and roughed in along with the rest of the work. The final installation of the accessories consists of hanging or placing the communication devices and hooking them up. Again, cover plates are installed to protect all connections and controls. Installing ironwork. Ironwork accessories consist of all interior and exterior ironwork which is not part of the structural frame. Part of this work may be called ornamental ironwork or often called miscellaneous iron, if it is fancy or ornamental. It includes stair and balcony railings, partitions, grille work, signs, signals, and walkways. It is used not only on building but also on other structures such as bridges, towers, and roads. Ornamental ironwork is usually installed by iron workers and welders. Installing hardware. Door and window hardware is usually installed with trim. Also, there are other items of hardware and miscellaneous equipment to be installed, such as mirrors, shower and toilet partitions, push plates, kick plates, door stops, mailboxes or slats, built-in cabinet work or bookcases and medicine cabinets, and street numbers. Completing the site. This includes providing access routes such as driveways, roads, and sidewalks, building exterior features such as patios and fences, sloping and finishing the earth, planting vegetation such as trees, shrubs, and lawns, and lastly is the final cleanup. These operations are called landscaping. Yung purpose daw ng site completion ay para mag-increase or para tumaas yung usefulness ng project at para ma-improve din yung appearance ng project. So site completion is especially important in the construction of highways and dams. In this project, it is often said that grass is a major construction material. The site work outside the structure is designed by the architect engineer. Where this work is extensive or specialized, the designer may consult a landscape architect, an agricultural engineer, or an agronomist or a specialist in the production of crops to include grasses. Contractors may do the site completion work with their own employees or they may subcontract the work to specialists. In the case of planting trees, shrubs, and grass, a separate subcontractor may be issued to a landscaping company. However, if the contractors had awarded an excavation subcontract for original grading of the site, the finished grading would also be included. Craftsmen who may work on site completion include nearly all trades. Most commonly employed are carpenters, cement finishers, operating engineers, electricians, masons, painters, and plumbers. Constructing access. If an access road or a railroad spur is to be built, it usually is constructed at the beginning of the project so that the materials and people can get to the site. For instance, an access road will be granted and temporary bridges and culverts will be installed. A minimum surface or usually loose gravel and sometimes within coat asphalt will be applied. After the structure is almost completed, the final base courses, surfaces, pavements, and drainage structures, such as culverts, will be put in place as a part of site completion. Sidewalks, walkways, parking lots, and driveways are also installed. The process used in providing access are similar to those in other grading and paving operations. Building and installing features. Features include patios, fences, walls, benches, pools, stages, plant boxes, and exterior lights. As with access roads, sometimes part of the work is done before the structure is complete. For instance, the cable for an electric outdoor post lantern would be installed along with roughing in the electrical work in the structure. This cable would be brought to the spot where the lantern is to go and stub out or left sticking out of the ground with the end tape. This early placement of cable eliminates the need to drill through exterior walls and tear up sidewalks and lawns. During the site completion, the lantern post is set in concrete, the lantern attached, and the wiring hookup completed. In other cases, a feature like a bench is completely installed as one of the last outside operations. Shaping the surface. In most projects, the rough grading is completed as part of preparing the site. Whenever possible, the site should be graded so as to provide temporary drainage during the construction of the structure. This reduces the damage which may be caused by rainfall during the progress of the job. Good drainage also makes it easy for workers to get back to work quickly after work has been stopped for bad weather. The final or finished grading is accomplished during the site completion phase. The slopes are carefully selected and surveyed. Too steep slope will let rainwater rush down too fast so that the soil will wash away or erode. If there is no slope, rainwater may stand in puddles until the soil soaks it up, and some soil quickly becomes waterlogged. The slope selected for a site depends on the kind of soil, the amount and frequency of rainfall, and the type of soil cover in the form of plants or pavement. Finish grading is done in about the same way as the other earth moving you have studied, but graders, rollers, and light-duty small hauling equipment such as front-end loader are used in place of heavy high-production equipment. Stones and debris are removed and then the surface is graded and rolled to give the earth the exact shape and firmness desired. Drainage structures such as bridges, culverts, and manholes are sometimes installed during the first preparation of the site. On other projects, drainage structures are put in during the completion of the outside work. Providing vegetations. There are three operations that provides vegetation. First is soil preparation, planting trees and shrubs, and seeding or sodding lawns or planting ground cover. After the fine grading is completed, the top surface of the earth may or may not be a type of soil in which trees, shrubs, and grass will grow. Kapag daw yung soil ay maganda or sa tingin mo ay makakapag-grow na ng vegetation, ay dagdagan mo na lang siya, alagyan mo na lang siya ng fertilizer na akalat mo doon sa lupa. Kadalasan daw ay light plows, harrows, or tillers yung madalas na inagamit para daw malusen yung soil at tapos halo daw siya doon sa fertilizer. Kapag daw graded surface ay hindi daw siya nakakasupport ng plant life. So, ibig sabihin ay walang kahit na anong halaman ang pwedeng mabuhay doon, kahit damo or kahit na ano, basta kahit na anong plants. Kaya kailangan na lagyan siya ng topsoil. Yung topsoil ay rich in organic matter and readily grows most kind of plants. Sometimes, topsoil is hauled to the site, but it is quite expensive and sometimes hard to find for large projects. Yung lupa daw na hindi man nalagyan ng mga living plants or living plants like yung grass, scrubs, and trees ay or nawawash away daw yung mga lupa. Ground cover may be a formal lawn around buildings or coarse vegetation along dams and highways. The type of ground cover is chosen to fit the needs for the control of surface water. There are three methods of obtaining a ground cover of grass. First is sodding. Sod is cut in strips and laid on top of bare ground, giving a complete ready-made ground cover. Sodding is quite expensive. Its use is limited to lawns and areas where erosion might be critical, such as around the abutments or ends of a bridge. Sprigging. So, the sprigs are planted 6 inches to 12 inches apart and do not cover the entire ground surface. As the grass grows, it is spread so that it eventually covers the entire surface. So, yung sprigging daw is mas mura kaysa sa sodding. And lastly is seeding. It means planting seed by hand or machine. With proper care, the grass seeds sprout, grow, and eventually form a ground cover. Seed and young grass must be protected from direct sun and from the wind. The seed may be worked into the ground by raking and mulch, a very thin layer of straw or peat moss that may be applied for protection. In all these methods ay pare-parehas daw na kailangan ng proper na paglagay or yung tamang amount ng fertilizer na alagay at saka syempre yung palagiang pagdilig nito para daw mas gumanda yung tubo ng mga halaman. So sa mga malililom daw na part ay pwede daw itanim dito yung ivy, which sometimes make a better ground cover than grass. Lawns areas that are hard to reach with a mower may also be covered with ivy or other low-growing plants. This kind of ground cover is begun from a process like sprigging, except individual plants are set out in a spaced pattern. These plants is spread to cover the total area. The last part of finishing the project is cleaning up. In this phase, the completing the site is cleanup. This includes yung pag-remove ng mga temporary structures at saka ng equipment. Tapos pag-collect at saka pagtapon ng mga basura or mga sobra-sobrang lupa or mga bato. And lastly, yung removal ng equipment at surplus materials from the site. So that's all for our report and thank you all for listening.